Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Homily Chat. I am Father Darrell Millette here in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada. And usually at this point in time, I introduce Father Michael Lillydahl just south of San Francisco, but I'm going to introduce him slightly differently today. He doesn't know I'm about to do this, but I'm going to say welcome to the birthday boy, Father Michael Lillydahl, just south of San Francisco in the United States. Happy, I don't know how old you are, 29th birthday?
Not 40 yet. So that's what I'm saying. I'm not yet 40. So
I'll say 29th. I'm 29 as well. I'm well experienced being 29. Very
yeah,
experienced.
absolutely. I often say that I just celebrate my 21st birthday over and over again. But now I'm at the point where my 21st birthday can vote and serve in the military. So that's where I am now. We're getting up there in age where, yeah, it's the numbers are getting higher than I thought they would ever get in my life.
I didn't know. And actually, I don't really know what that is in the United States. So.
Oh, so that's 18 to vote and
Okay.
to serve in the military. So 39. Today I turned
There you go.
39.
Well,
Hmm.
happy birthday anyway. It's
Well,
here you
thank
are
you. Thank
working
you.
anyway on your birthday, right? So
I know it's Jim Gaffigan has a line about, having to work on your birthday and how you're always kind of like, why do I have to do this on my birthday? Why do I have to do this on my birthday? But
birthday.
today was actually a good day. I had a lot of work to do at the school. Had the class to teach that I'm teaching. So I only teach 2 days a week. Just happened to be one of these days, and none of the kids knew it was my birthday. So I got that kind of all the birthday celebrations coming in on social media beforehand, and then afterwards some more birthday celebrations coming in. But I usually say, oh yeah, back here in sunny San Francisco or just south of sunny San Francisco, I think I have to say it's apocalyptic south of San Francisco right now. The atmosphere is insane. It looks, I was trying to find words to describe it. Yesterday, it never got light enough that the streetlights turned off. So the streetlights were on all day because it was so dark, but it
Wow.
wasn't just dark like you would see at a thunderstorm or something. It was dark orange with the smoke. And so it almost looks like some of the pictures that you may have seen from the new Blade Runner movie of just this kind of desert, post-apocalyptic, worn down city is what it looked like. And it was crazy. And that came on the heels of just crazy heat.
Mm-hmm.
So this past weekend, I did the conversion here because we were always trying to do the conversion for you. It was
Thanks.
116 degrees here in the Bay Area, which is 46.66 degrees Celsius. And we don't
That
have air conditioning in the rectory.
wow. Is the air conditioning is the air quality pretty bad outside too?
It's not too bad because apparently
Okay.
the smoke is so high in the atmosphere that it's not really affecting the air quality here. So,
Okay.
there have been days in the last couple of weeks where you would walk outside and it just smelled like a barbecue. You just smelled the smoke, but
Mm-hmm.
either you can't smell the smoke now, or I've been smelling the smoke for so long that I've become acclimated to it and I just don't notice it anymore.
Wow.
But it's definitely the color and the darkness have made it eerie. At yesterday afternoon, at 1 in the afternoon, your body just felt like it was 9 o'clock at night because it felt like the sun has gone down and it was time to get ready for bed rather than it's time to make lunch. So
Wow. That's wow. Well, definitely keeping everyone in your neck of the woods in prayers for sure. Yowza.
yeah, well, thank you very much. Thank you. So it's the air quality here. I think we can deal with. It's the people on the fires in the fire zones. I think that they definitely need the prayers and I'm ready for 2020 to be over like everybody else. It always seems like it's just one more thing. So if
Yeah,
I
yeah.
never have a 39th birthday like this again, I will be very happy with that.
Yeah, everyone's got their bingo card, right? Marking down what's on 2020. Yeesh.
Yeah,
Crazy,
exactly,
crazy, crazy.
exactly. And speaking of that, I think last week I saw another one for the bingo card was up near Lake Tahoe, which is a popular vacation spot for people from the Bay Area. It's about a 4.5 hour drive. They found fleas that were carrying the bubonic plague.
Well, okay, yeah. Well, of course they did.
Yes, yeah.
Of course they did. Oh boy.
And
Well,
the newspaper article just tried to pass it off like, yeah, they found some fleas, so they just had to shut down a couple of the parking lots at some of the hiking trails. But people have gotten it before in the past. And I was like, yeah, we read about it in history books. I mean, those are,
It wiped out like a third of Europe at one point, but
yeah, there's a
whatever.
reason it's
No
called the
big deal.
Black Death, so.
Oh man. Well, on that note,
Yeah,
the word
let's
of
go from the
God.
Black Death to the Book of Life. So,
Oh boy. And I got a little dog wandering around. Actually, just behind me, you see kind of a haphazard pile of doggy toys that she's completely ignoring because she wants to lick my elbow right about now. But anyway, my dog wants to be in the podcast, so there we are.
oh, yeah, have her come on in. So, but the other kind of good news today marks the beginning of the NFL season. So, I've had that to look forward to. So, American professional football is back.
And sadly, the CFL is shut down for the entire season, the Canadian Football League.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the CFL, it's a much smaller league, and it's basically the revenue is gate driven. And when there's no gate, there's not much revenue. So,
Yeah. Yep.
can't make a go of it, basically. But it'll be nice to have some football on TV anyway. And the Riders won't lose a single game, so it's all good.
That's right. They'll be undefeated. You're going to buy this shirt, right? 2020 Riders undefeated 2020 season. So
Yeah, sure. NHL's still on, so that's also good. But good old.
All right. Well, let's turn to the gospel or the readings. I know I'm going to be preaching on the gospel this week, although I did see a good friend of mine who is a priest in Pittsburgh posted a tweet, I think today or yesterday, where he was talking about what he's going to preach this week. And he said, what if I just read the first reading 20 times over in a row for people for preaching this weekend? And so if you look at that caused me actually to look at the first reading. And it was especially the beginning. Wrath and anger are hateful things, yet the sinner hugs them tight. And I thought, I could stand to just have that read to me 20 or 30 times in a row.
I like that translation.
What does your translation say?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure exactly what part of the scripture that's from, to be honest.
The first two lines.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah, sure. I guess anger and wrath, these are abominations, yet a sinner holds on to them. It's not as poetic.
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty good, though. Well, I can read the New Revised Canadian Standard Version, whatever you want to call it, for the gospel then. This is from Matthew 18:21 to 35. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Peter came and said to Jesus, Lord, how often should I forgive my brother or sister if they sin against me? As many as 7 times? Jesus said to him, not 7 times, but I tell you 77 times. For this reason, the kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who wished to settle accounts with his slaves. When he began the reckoning, one who owed him 10,000 talents was brought to him. And as he could not pay, his Lord ordered him to be sold, together with his wife and children and all his possessions, and payment to be made. So the slave fell on his knees before him, saying, have patience with me, and I will pay you everything. The Lord of that slave released him and forgave him the debt. But that same slave, as he went out, came upon one of his fellow slaves who owed him 100 denarii. And seizing him by the throat, he said, pay what you owe. Then his fellow slave fell down and pleaded with him, have patience with me, and I will pay you. But he refused. Then he went and threw him into prison until he would pay the debt. When his fellow slaves saw what had happened, they were greatly distressed, and they went and reported to their lord all that had taken place. Then his lord summoned him and said to him, you wicked slave, I forgave you all that debt because you pleaded with me. Should you not have had mercy on your fellow slave as I had mercy on you? And in anger, his Lord handed him over to be tortured until he would pay his entire debt. So my heavenly Father will also do to every one of you if you do not forgive your brother or sister from your heart. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. Well, there's a lot in today's gospel, and I say one of the things that I love preaching on sometimes is the symbolism of numbers in the gospel, and we have quite a few numbers. And actually, your Canadian version has more numbers than we do in the American version. So, a numerical symbolic value, but in essence, what it is so many more times than what you think the completion of what you have to forgive is. And that's what you have to get up to in terms of forgiveness. But this gospel, I have to confess, is bringing up, and it's not, basically one of my own faults in terms of preaching is last week we had the gospel that immediately precedes this, where Jesus talks about reconciling with your brother. Go to your brother, just you and him alone, and if he doesn't listen, then kind of bring in a couple more witnesses, and if that doesn't work, then bring in the church. I actually referenced this gospel that we have today in my homily for last week without realizing that it was the next Sunday's gospel, and without realizing that it actually comes immediately after it in the gospel as well, because I talked about the difference between kind of reconciliation and forgiveness, something that I think Jane had brought up in one of her comments during our show last week, that reconciliation involves two people. It always necessarily involves the other. And so I was saying, we're told, and I think I said it somewhere, we're told elsewhere in the gospel that Jesus tells Peter, you have to forgive, without even realizing that, well, it's the next line that Jesus tells him that. And so I'm going to kind of start this, or do this homily as almost as a continuation, that we remember that this is all part of the same gospel. It's all part of the same, not story or situation. It's all part of the same thing that's happening with Jesus, right? It's not as if they go to Jesus and Jesus gives this instruction on reconciliation, and then they take a break for a week, and then he comes back and then he instructs them on forgiveness. Mm-hmm. No, it's all kind of part and parcel. And bringing up that difference again, that we have reconciliation, but even if you aren't able to reconcile, because as Jane pointed out, right, reconciliation necessarily involves the other. Even if that other isn't willing to go into the process of reconciliation, we're still called to this interior forgiveness of our heart. And I may talk about forgiveness and the need for forgiveness. And then whenever I kind of talk about forgiveness in a homily, one of the things I like to mention is sometimes that the hardest person to forgive is when we have to forgive ourselves. Because I think, even if you're married, your spouse's flaws pretty well, right? When they need to be forgiven, or when you need to forgive them, or they need to forgive you. But I think we know our own flaws, and oftentimes are so ashamed of our own failings and our own weaknesses, so much that it can be very, very difficult to forgive ourselves. I find it fascinating, kind of as a priest, right? That when I sit in the confessional and people come into confession, I find it amazing how merciful I'm able to feel towards them, that I'm able to be towards them, when sometimes I'm not able to be that merciful towards myself. And I think that's not you don't have to be a priest who hears confession to kind of have that experience of having kind of a different standard of mercy and forgiveness towards yourself than we do towards other people. And so I think I may go down that path a little bit of saying, especially during this time of pandemic, especially when people their nerves are frayed, especially when, people are just have kind of shorter tempers and whatnot, we need to be able to have mercy, and you need to be able to have mercy on yourself. And, I think we've said this before, that oftentimes the first person you're preaching to is yourself, because this is the message that I need to hear quite frequently is have mercy on yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I like that a lot. It's that definitely can be one of the hardest things in the world to do. I mean, you think of like even one of the definitions for Satan is the accuser, and what's one of the things that happens quite often when we become aware that we've messed up is, the accuser, I think, kicks into overdrive sometimes. Even after we've been forgiven for it, we're still going to remember and feel bad for whatever. And it can be the hardest thing to forgive ourselves. Even though, maybe we've already confessed it. Jesus has absolutely forgiven us for it. It's one of the hardest things to do. So you bring up a really good point. I think a lot of us, if you're human, you struggle with that. I know I sure do. I think it's a very good point. Because forgiveness is one of those things. It's also a bit of a journey to forgive. When I see Jesus saying forgive 77 times, or another passage 70 times 7, basically doubling that number 7. In other words, meaning don't quit, keep working on it. Because I think Jesus understands human psychology very, very well. I mean, that's one of the silliest statements I think I've ever said. He understands human psychology really well. He made it. And that is that forgiveness for us it's not a binary thing. It's not like a light switch. You turn it off, turn it on, shut it off. You forgive and then everything's perfect and it's all wonderful. It's usually a journey. And when I see him saying forgive 77 times, part of what I hear him saying is don't give up. Keep working on it. Keep forgiving, because it's something that we need to keep working on. It's, I liken it to one of the images I was thinking of. Do you remember Star Trek First Contact?
You'd have to describe it to me. So is that one of the newer Chris Pine movies, or is
No, it was a Next Generation movie. I think one of the best movies in the entire franchise, certainly the best Next Generation movie. So this was a movie where Picard and that version of the Enterprise E, they get thrown back in time and they're encountering the Borg, and there's a whole thing where they're fighting against the Borg. But there's one scene in the movie where there's Data, the android, and he's got this emotion chip, and he's sharing with Picard that he's starting to feel, like anxiety and whatever. And Picard says, Data, this might be a good time to shut off your emotion chip. So Data goes, done. And then Picard goes, Data, there are times when I envy you.
Yes.
That's not how forgiveness typically works. You can't just shut it off. It's all done. 77 times, don't give up on it. Keep working on it. And sometimes, it might not feel we're making much progress, but maybe we've moved a millimeter or a 16th of an inch if you're using that version of measurement. But at least you're working on it. And, sometimes, I heard one talk, she's a pretty prominent person on Catholic social media, Sister Miriam James Heinland. She gave a talk to a Catholic university organization in Canada here, CCO. This was probably about 7-8 years ago now. And she was sharing in this keynote talk about, some things that she had to work on when she was working on forgiveness in her own life. And she found that it was actually a really powerful thing for her. She didn't want to forgive whatever, what was going on. She didn't want to forgive. So what a wise spiritual director had encouraged her to do was to move it back a step. And don't pray for the willingness to forgive. Pray for the willingness to be willing to forgive. Like, move it back a step. And in that way, you're starting to move forward and just like baby steps and just letting the Lord take you on that journey, the 77 times. Not that it's overnight, but you're moving, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's actually a good amount of freedom in that we're moving. We're not there yet, but we're moving and we're trusting this entirely to the Lord. And it's, I found that was a very powerful image, because sometimes we don't want to forgive, or we're not in a position to really want to even try. So move it back a step. Make that your prayer. Lord, grant me the willingness to be willing to forgive.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like that.
So anyway, this is a great gospel. It's a fantastic set of readings here today.
Well, the image that came to my mind when you were talking about forgiveness not being a switch or binary, that it's a journey, is the first image that somehow just popped into my mind is Peter walking on the water and beginning to sink, and then reaching out to Christ is almost this journey that the Lord has called him out of the boat, just like the Lord has called us to forgive, knowing that we may not be the greatest at it. We may start to sink in the water. But just like Peter, of course, reaches out to Jesus, that's what we have to do. And we have this kind of unwillingness to forgive or problems forgiving, again, to kind of reach out to Jesus. I find it kind of interesting. I was thinking about doing this because oftentimes when I preach about forgiveness, I had found this story on an evangelical website talking about forgiveness. And it was a story of forgiveness of actually of a woman whose husband was one of the pilots of the planes that were taken over in 9/11. And how talking about how she had a lot of difficulty forgiving, and it even came into to play where she had difficulty praying the Our Father, because of that line at the end, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And she just felt she couldn't say that because she was unwilling to forgive. And she just kind of over time and I think this kind of goes to what you're talking about with Sister Sock, given that willingness to forgive, that she just said, praying the Our Father and praying that and hearing that command, but also hearing that grace comes into it, right? I'm not being asked to forgive just on my own willpower, that forgiving one is a grace-filled moment. And then she said, that she didn't use the word hostage. I almost kind of want to put that in there. She said that she was being held prisoner by her unwillingness to forgive. And it was only by kind of, as you said, taking this step back and being able to be willing to forgive, could she move into that process of forgiveness. And then I often say, it's oftentimes the people we have to forgive are or when we forgive ourselves, is for actions that are a lot less than we would consider, hijacking an airplane and committing a gross act of terrorism. So I may tell that story just because I think it's also timely with September 11th, because it's I think especially here in the United States, I think it's still appropriate to pray for that situation, to kind of commiserate about it. I don't know if commemorate's the right word, but to memorialize what happened on that day in the liturgy in some way, because it will be on people's minds. I'm starting to see even today, a day before, posts start coming up on social media about never forgetting, honoring the sacrifice that so many people made on that day. And I think it'd be appropriate to bring it into the homily. So I think especially if you can tie it in with forgiveness in some way, to do that.
Yeah.
So
I mean, because what you're saying also, I think it speaks in many ways to the collect, the opening prayer.
you're big on this collect. You're big on this. So.
Well, I mean, the nice thing is this book happens to have it all in there, right? So I got it right in front of me. But I mean, I think it really gets at what you're saying. Look upon us, O God, creator and ruler of all things, and that we may feel the working of your mercy. Grant that we may serve you with all our heart. But the primary is his mercy that's working in us. Therefore we can serve, we can forgive, and stories like that one that you shared, I mean, stories of forgiveness to that level are powerful, right? We've had a few comments come in. So Jane's commenting over on YouTube. I think she's mentioning the story I shared of the Borg. Comment about basically there's other parts of that story that don't necessarily go with forgiveness, because Picard ends up being the Moby Dick character basically, and I will make them pay for what they've done. Yeah, maybe that's not the every image.
Oh, I like this. There's a comment from Katrina here on Facebook that I like. The beautiful thing is we're not alone in the struggle of forgiveness. Yeah. God himself has to forgive, and we can learn from that, right? I mean, Jesus on the cross has one of these cries, crying out, forgive them for they know not what they do. And so this struggle to forgive, this need to forgive is something felt by God as well. And so I think we can, in a sense, almost unite ourselves with Christ on the cross when we have to forgive. So I like that comment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's really the only way we ultimately probably can, is because he has, right? Like we're participating in him. So, yeah.
Yep. Well, like they say, I mean, what they say in our sacramental classes in the seminary, right? That the power of the sacraments all comes from the cross. And so, I want to say that even though, the confession is a sacrament and it has that level of sacramental grace, that there is grace, even if it's not sacramental grace, when we forgive someone. So, when I have to forgive someone who has wronged me, even if it's not in the confession, there is grace, even if it's not sacramental grace, there is a participation in that forgiveness from the cross, when we just forgive people, or, in a sense is what we've been talking about, when we even begin to enter into that journey of forgiveness in our own lives.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you everyone for your comments. Katerina says, I'll forgive Father Michael for pronouncing my name wrong. I know
Thank you very much.
So it's all good. It's all good. Thank you everyone for joining us. And yeah, definitely do chime in. We'd love to see your comments, whether you're catching us live. I know our times for recording are kind of sporadic because our schedules are kind of sporadic. And thanks to Father Michael, recording on his birthday of all times.
Well, thank you. Yeah, no problem. So,
but yeah, so I know it's hard to catch us live sometimes, but even if you're watching this after the fact, do please comment. We do love to read your comments, and you might spark something for the next show. So
and I'll say this: for every one time you spark something for the next show, you spark 3 things that I mentioned in my homily on that Sunday. So please do keep commenting. So even if we don't say, thank you for that, I have taken those suggestions, those comments, and put them into my homily more times than I can count. And I want to say thank you for that, because the people who listen, I hope, benefit from that much more than if I just kind of went off my own wits on some of these things.
Of course, this past weekend, I went off my own wits, which wasn't very much because I had my brother's wedding this last Saturday. Mm-hmm. And it's not that we stayed up late partying because it's COVID. What are you going to do? But I was still so wired from the day that I didn't fall asleep at any reasonable hour. So for Sunday masses, basically try to say something sort of semi-coherent, and after 4 minutes, just stop. That's what my homily was like this last weekend. So,
we've all had weekends like that.
I mean, mass with the people, including communion, which we're giving communion after mass here in this diocese. I think the whole thing took about 33 minutes. There's no music either, but like a weekday mass almost.
Yeah.
I have
to say, I think our Sunday masses are really only taking about 30 to 35 minutes with people. And that's with the distribution of communion, because we don't have music either. And the priest is doing all the reading. So you don't have that time of, one lector stepping down and another lector coming up. So it is what
basically.
It is.
Yeah. So anyway, there's a lot going on. I mean, we didn't really get it the first reading, other than it would be a fun one to say that first line multiple times, especially if you use the American translation. How did that go again, the U.S. translation?
Wrath and anger are hateful things, yet the sinner hugs them tight.
That's amazing.
I love that imagery of the word, right? Because it's we often think of hug as a term, an act of friendship, an act of love, but yet, we're hugging wrath and anger. And I think it speaks to how Satan works, that he takes what is good and kind of twists it into something that's bad. So there's a lot that you could say there. Right. And that second reading as well, there's a lot you could preach on there.
I mean, the Psalm you could preach on too, right? I mean, the line, it's Psalm 103, and it's really a foundational line. He does not deal with us according to our sins, nor repay us according to our iniquities. I mean, thanks be to God we got a Savior, because if it's about me getting to heaven on my own power, I'm hooped. So, yeah. And then, the second reading, from Romans 14, we do not live to ourselves, we do not die to ourselves. If we live to the Lord. If we die to the Lord. So then whether we live or whether we die, we are the Lord's. It's actually a pretty common funeral reading here. So, yeah, there's lots going on. The Gospel Acclamation has a lot too, although if we're not singing, usually we skip the Gospel Acclamation, but... At least here, I don't know how you.
I think you're supposed to. I say it anyway because I think it's profound, and there's a lot to add into kind of making those connections. And there's a lot here you can make with that connection with loving one another as the Lord has loved us, that the Lord has forgiven us. And, like I was saying with from the Our Father, we forgive because we have been forgiven.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So what I don't know whether I'm going to use the Borg as my primary image on this weekend.
Yeah.
My brain is weird. But I'll use something.
Yeah, so we have to say, I guess, tune in next week to see if Father Daryl used the Borg as his imagery of forgiveness, and if he did, whether or not Jane stood up and countered with her counter argument.
Yeah. I don't know if Jane is coming to Mass here this weekend or not. I don't know. I might have to ask the other priest to say that Mass if she is, but Jane's in Saskatoon here, so. Oh, well, thank you very much. I'm sorry. I know at one point in this show too, the feed dropped very briefly. I'm still having some internet issues apparently. It's all being recorded, so you can always listen to the audio version. The whole thing will go up unimpeded. But unfortunately for the live stream, I don't know what's going on. We're getting some audio or some slight dropout still, it seems. So sorry about that. Sorry, eh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. And again, if you're not able to catch us live, go to homilychat.com or look up Homily Chat on Twitter or Facebook or wherever you get your podcast from. Take
care, everyone. God bless. Live long and prosper.
And this time that's appropriate. So there we go with that. So we'll see you later, guys.